All right, so let's just start off. We're going to have you say and spell your name for us.
Okay, Melanie Harrington, where am I supposed to look?
You can
You
look
looking
right at
too?
me.
Okay,
That's fine.
Melaniehharrington.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you very much. Now, so we're going to go a little bit back in history now. Where did you grow up?
I was born in Vermilion Parish and raised in Terrebonne Parish, and I've been a resident of St. Martin Parish for almost 20 years now.
St. Martinville Parish strong. That's where I lived. um, well, what was it? What was it like where you were growing up?
I grew up in Houma, which is very much an oil industry based town. Um, so I went to high school with a lot of folks whose families were employed by and in that industry. My dad worked for a natural gas pipeline company, but our high school was along the bayou, and it had a really diverse collection of folks, variety of backgrounds. Um, we have substantial numbers of the Homeless Indian tribe in that area, so I was fortunate to have a really eclectic, diverse group of classmates to grow up with there.
That is fortunate. What kind of advantage would you say that gave you in stepping out into life?
Oh, well, I think it was the beginning of my understanding the beauty of diversity in our world, and it definitely experiences there that did not celebrate diversity definitely led to an impact of social justice and community service work that I would do later in life.
Um, I'm pretty sure, but did you go to college?
I did.
How far did you go in college?
I have a master's degree, and I started off at LSU. Changed my major a million times, it seems. All somewhat related.
What were some of the majors?
I started in special ed, then I got into recreation therapy, then I changed to social work, and I actually didn't finish my bachelor's there. I transferred to the University of Connecticut. Ended up with a bachelor's. It was a social work type degree, bachelor's in family relations and human development. And then I went on to get a master's degree in applied cultural anthropology.
Oh, wow. So it sounds like throughout undergrad, it was always trying to help somebody was sort of the focus.
Yeah, wanting to serve in some way. Yeah.
And I guess social work is what you landed on at the end of your undergrad?
Well, I consider myself, I guess, more an anthropologist than a social worker, but not an anthropologist in the way that most people think of anthropology in terms of, digging up artifacts or things like that. My focus was on applied cultural anthropology, and so the program and my work focused on human rights and race relations. And so the program that I was with really prided itself on using anthropology as a tool to increase understanding and awareness of different cultural groups as a way to therefore better serve folks in any kind of human service capacity.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. I was going to ask you to explain what that difference was, but I think you did.
So an example would have been, an applied cultural anthropologist might do troubleshooting. So a former alumnus of UConn from that program had been hired by a health clinic in New York City. They were trying to get more people who spoke Spanish as their first language to come into their facilities and utilize their facilities. And they had done all of these ad campaigns and, weren't getting the response that they thought they were going to get. And the anthropologist came in and said, why don't you try advertising, with someone speaking Spanish, which they had not thought of, which is a simple enough fix, but just helping to bridge those gaps and build understanding.
So as a person who has studied this, and it sounds like it's been part of your work all along, what advice would you give to everybody out, in TV land or whatever?
I think, through years of doing race relations and diversity work, my big life lessons have been that as human beings, we all certainly have much more in common than we have different. But what makes us spectacular, are those differences. It's what contributes to, I think, the beauty in our world and to amazing individuality. And unless I know where I came from and what my history is and the strength of my ancestors, I think it would be really hard for me to appreciate other people. So two big lessons. One is we certainly have more in common than not as humans. And the other is until we all as human beings are able to appreciate where we come from, it's hard for us to fully appreciate and celebrate where other people come from. So if you look at, kids who are in Aryan Nation and groups like that, they're usually recruited at a very young age, and when they're asked about their identity, they don't know what to say. They can't say, oh, my great-grandfather was a trapper and a fisherman and supported 11 kids by living on a houseboat in Marsh Island. I can say that, and for me, anytime things in my mind start to get tough, I can call on that and say, okay, I have this resilience in my in my genes. I can handle this, But there are kids who don't have any idea of culture or tradition or identity. And then I think that the way they try to lift themselves up is by putting other people down. And it's just not the best way to go about making the world a better place. So
right. Maybe a little instant gratification, but in the long run, not that.
Very detrimental, yeah.
All right, so let me ask, how did you first get involved with AOC?
My very first involvement with AOC was in a professional capacity. I'm the education coordinator at Vermilionville, and last year I had the privilege to work with a group of French immersion kids from Lafayette High School, as well as a local folklorist from the Center for Louisiana Studies, Pud Sharp, and a wonderful French immersion teacher, Mr. Mario Charas. We had, when I came on board with Vermilionville, a grant had been approved already and was placed in my lap for me to see to fruition. And that grant focused on getting French immersion students at the high school level to come into our Living History Museum and interview artisans about their crafts, and also about speaking French as a language, because many of the artisans are bilingual. So it was a beautiful experience, but I have no technology skills. And the kids are much more tech savvy than most of us adults, but many of the kids had never handled, a camera or worked with a mic or dealt with lighting and taken any of those things into consideration. So our entire group was able to benefit through direct training from AOC staff. And not only that, they then held our hand through the entire, post-recording and footage gathering process to assist with editing. We used the facilities here. All of the students who were involved became AOC members. And we really wanted to encourage them to take those skills that they had acquired for this project and then use them in their, broader community lives. And the final product was a nice, really sweet little documentary on the artisans of Vermilionville, which I believe has aired on AOC or is scheduled to air on AOC. So that was my segue into it. I then followed up by taking some of the classes on my own because I'm really interested in interviewing some of the elders in my family. And so I just wanted to have an idea of how to, use a basic camera if I wanted to borrow one from here, or make sure that I was getting, decent sound and the very basics. But it was great. It's been a great intro to AOC.
Have you gone out and done any of your own interviews yet?
Not yet. I'm still in the question generation stage. But my parents quickly remind me that, my elders are my elders, and I better get to them. So, and then we've continued in our relationship because we've also worked with the Northside High School radio station, and Ed Bowie is affiliated with that as well. And so, trying to train young people in having good interview and broadcasting skills and integrity.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to go off on that tangent. What do you mean by that integrity? I love that, by the way.
I think there are a lot of things about that. For me, having a good work ethic around any kind of project that you're going to do. So being prepared, doing your homework ahead of time, but also, being respectful and really trying to get the full dynamic or full perspective of the person that you're interviewing. And even if part of that interview isn't something you necessarily agree with or embrace, allowing the person that you're interviewing to represent themselves as fully and honestly as they can.
Huh. That's excellent. I love that. Yeah, I went to college for broadcast journalism, and I remember having those similar discussions with my professor, sort of lamenting what the sort of trends you're seeing in the broadcast industry.
Yeah.
As far as integrity and the sort of lack thereof, and profit-based, I guess, motives.
And then, also trying to instill in kids who might be interested in going into broadcast journalism, the importance of maintaining the integrity of that role, especially in light of current events in today's society. The way that our current leadership has vilified the media really concerns me. I'm a former social studies teacher, so I'm all about our free speech, and I think that without that fundamental right, we have no democracy.
Yeah.
So that really concerns me, and it's also a connection I try to make with the kids. Even if what someone has to say isn't what you agree with, it's important that everybody gets to be heard, because otherwise you're censoring and there's not full participation.
And it's important too that those professional standards sort of be upheld, and those integrity standards that
absolutely,
so that it is that fourth estate, or it can be held up as the fourth estate. Yeah, I love it. Let's see what. I think you gave a pretty. You already gave us what was your first impression of AOC. I think you gave us that pretty well. What has most surprised you about working with AOC, or about AOC?
I think once I got involved, I didn't realize the breadth of the scope of programming and of opportunities. So I have 2 teenagers at home, and when I learned more about the programs that are specifically targeted for young people, that was exciting for me to hear. In a lot of ways, people are concerned about what their teens are doing on their downtime, but we really don't offer as many fun or recreational opportunities for kids as I think we should, if we really want to occupy their downtime in a good way. And I think that the opportunities offered here for kids, they allow for creativity, they allow for exploration, they speak to a broad range of kids. I think kids who are very into technology and computers, and then those kids who want to create something, want to make a movie, or make a statement, or so that was it was really nice to see that there's an effort targeting young people. And then on the flip side of that, I was also happy to see when I would come in to use the community space, I was very happy to see how many senior citizens were in, and how easy it was for them to ask for assistance and things. So that was nice too.
What is, and maybe you might have mentioned it in your interviews of your community or your community elders, but would that be your dream project, or what is your dream project to work on?
Dream project. That's going to take a little bit. I don't know if I have any one dream project, and I guess things that I'd like to do, that I probably should do, if not now, when, right? Often have to do with the climate of our community. I would love for us to have more open discussions about race and issues around race in our community. I think this region does a lot of things right, and I think for the most part, a lot of people have a really strong sense of pride and cultural identity, but I don't think we've explored in multicultural settings enough. We haven't had enough discussions about privilege and who benefits and how and why they benefit, whether they wanted to or not. And I don't think we've had enough opportunities to fully listen and hear what the other, whoever that may be, has to say about their experience living in our community. I'd love for us to just have a really open dialogue without a lot of defensiveness or excuse making when it comes to some of the challenges we have on coming together better here.
As I was listening to you talk, I kept hearing the word in my head, and then you said it, defensiveness. Mm-hmm. So I guess that would be my question. Maybe you have an answer, maybe you don't. Maybe that's the answer that eludes us all, right? But how do you think we get past that defensiveness? Because that seems to be sort of at the base of that discussion not happening, of those conversations not happening.
And again, the current political climate, one of the things I've observed is how polarized people are. And I have really, really strong political opinions. I'm very passionate about my beliefs, but so is the person who doesn't share those beliefs, And I think that the thing that keeps us defensive is wanting the other person to come over to our side, basically. I think if the focus were more on identifying common ground and believing that you can identify common ground, then the defensiveness might recede a bit. And it may be that the only starting point is that both people feel incredibly strong about their position. So that's one thing they have in common, though. They're both passionate about what they believe in. And then once you start there, you can begin to find other things. What did I see recently? I saw a great little video. I think it was done in England. And they had little square boxes on the floor, and people were in their boxes. And they had people, some of the general categories that we put people into, race and gender and age and religion, and but then they started creating these other boxes, like, okay, who in here is a grandparent, or who in here loves cats, or just who appreciates art, and so all of those boundaries from those boxes started getting blurred, and people began to see how they connected rather than what separated them, So yeah, I think that type of an ongoing project for our community would be a beautiful thing. Wouldn't be an easy thing, but it would be a beautiful thing.
Well, let's make it happen. We're starting the AOC Podcast Network too, so that's another place to consider it.
Okay.
We'll talk about that more after. What are you most looking forward to in 2017?
That's a good question. Let me think. I hope it's something I can look forward to. I hope that I can become better at kind of just being in the moment. And again, with considering the current political climate of our nation, it seems that daily we are bombarded with things that I don't think are very positive, you know. So being able to shift and remember what's immediate, and the big picture things are very, very important to me. And I think we all have a very important role to play in impacting that. But there are also some things in our immediate control. So, you know, as a mother of two teenagers, how am I modeling how to be a good citizen for them? And what am I doing to maintain my connection to them? And as someone who's very passionate about our culture and the arts and our community, you know, am I playing a role in doing what I can to support that and to make sure that young people have opportunities to be introduced to things that are new and different and maybe engaging for them, you know. As an educator, I would love to be looking forward to really positive changes in public education. But again, I don't think we have the climate yet for the kind of shift that I'm looking for there. I don't know. I think just 2017, just day to day, enjoying, you know, friends and family and community. I'm married to a musician, so you know, it's a very regular part of my life to be able to hear music and be surrounded by really talented friends and family. And I just want to make sure I don't take that for granted, you know. Have maybe practice more gratitude for 2017.
Nice. I like that the thing that you're looking forward to is improving your own outlook. That's nice.
It's a challenge.
No, but yeah, it's something that, and you know, I think I probably fall right into line with you there, and that, like, that's the self-examination is sort of, that's the only place you can, especially sometimes when the world is coming at you with that negativity.
Yeah.
That's where you can have your silver lining is. And that, well, I can always work better to make my own outlook better.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's awesome. All right, let's take it a little easy now. Are you reading anything now, or are you watching or listening to any music in particular?
I am. I'm not going to be able to remember the author. I'm reading Empire Falls, Pulitzer Prize winning novel, and I absolutely don't remember the author's name.
I recognize the name. What is it about a little bit? Or?
It's based on a diner that's located in Maine, and I'm only at the very beginning of the book, so I'm not sure exactly where it's heading. But
fair enough.
Also on my nightstand is a book by Jimmy Carter that I go to periodically, and my husband reminded me last night that there's a book entitled Tribe, I believe, that I've also peeked into and hope to get back to, and it's all about how we find our tribe, our people that we connect with and decide to share life with in our communities.
Nice. Any good movies recently, or really good music albums or anything?
Actually, I have enjoyed listening to the release that Josh Caffrey and Joel Savlaw worked on around Lomax recordings and having local artists redo a lot of the Lomax songs. It's just been a real treat, and it's so rich, the work that Josh did through the Library of Congress. It just blows me away every time he reveals something else based on his research that he did. And again, you know, looking at how we're all connected. I mean, we are all connected, and I think that's one of the things about living here too. That just my kids will tell me all the time, anytime we go out in public, "Mama, how do you know so many people?" But it's part of this community, you know. And really, if you interact with humans at all, just any place, you're going to find connections. That's why it's so hard for me to see people set on divisiveness, because we're so connected. And you know, if I do something mean and ugly to you, somehow that comes back to me because of that connection. And if I do something loving and kind for you, that comes back to me. So I don't know, it just doesn't seem like it's rocket science to choose loving kindness over, you know, hate and ugly, but we still need constant reminders.
For sure. What would, if you had to pick a best music playlist, let's say 3 songs.
Oh,
5 songs?
I could
Does that
never
make it easier?
limit
never-
it to songs.
Could you limit it?
to genres, maybe. You know? Wow. No, I couldn't limit it to songs. That's really tricky.
And you don't have to. We've had other people deny that. They say they can't do it, and we understand totally.
You know, of course, my South Louisiana roots come through, so I can't deny being uplifted, you know, by Cajun or Zydeco or swamp pop music. But you know, my son listens to a lot of contemporary hip hop and rap, and it might not be my first choice for casual listening, but it certainly engages us in a lot of interesting conversations, you know. Recently we watched, what's the movie that just came out about early Ice Cube and
Straight Outta Compton?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we sat and we watched Straight Outta Compton, and my son was amazed that I actually knew. So, you know, I was in high school in the 80s, and that I knew some of the lyrics. But we talked about, you know, how politics influenced, how people were making political statements through their music, you know. And so, of course, then that leads us also to talking about Bob Marley and, you know, Neil Young. I mean, there are all these people who use music as a tool to try to engage us and get us to think. And then there are people who use music just to help us feel good, you know, and that's good too. We need that too. So I don't know. I love music, and I really, I don't think I could choose a favorite. I mean, I love Louisiana, any kind of Louisiana roots-based music. But far beyond that, you know, I love Festival International because of the diversity of the musicians that come. I'll listen to, you know, some country. I guess I'm not real big on country, but I think all forms of music have something to contribute, and I can't imagine a life without music. Yeah. To this day, I walk into my parents' house and my dad has a radio playing on the porch and the stereo playing, and it's part of our world.
Music all day long. What can I ask? What kind of music your husband plays?
He plays Cajun.
He plays Cajun.
Yep. He is Chad Huval. He's with the Huval Family Band, and he plays with Acadian Cajun Band, and he plays periodically with Beausoleil. He'll play as their accordionist, and other musicians will call him. But he's also engaged in teaching kids how to play accordion. So I think his youngest student is maybe 7, 8 years old. And he had a student who was in his 80s until he passed away not too long ago. And then he also teaches at the traditional music program for UL. So yeah, we're immersed. You trip over instruments as you walk through the front door.
That's fun. I love that. When you were a child growing up, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was your fantasy job as a child?
My first fantasy job as a child was to become a veterinarian. And then I found out that I might actually have to perform surgery on an animal, and that nixed that. I guess after that, the next direction I went in was really social work. When I was in high school, I worked at a shelter for abused kids for a little while, and I was always the person in our service organizations that would say, why don't we go over and work, with the kids at the group home or to the nursing home, so I don't know. I think that's kind of always been part of my path. I didn't realize that it would lead to me, rather than just providing direct service, how it would lead to me questioning why some things are and how we need to try to address the bigger picture, So why is it that in a country as wealthy as ours, we have so many people who require assistance eating daily, whether it's through food stamps or soup kitchens, and why do we have homelessness, and why do we not have affordable health care for everyone? I mean, those are really pertinent questions, and every other developed country that I know of has ways of addressing them more effectively than we have. And I can't understand why we can't use somebody's effective best practices model. It's not even like we have to start from scratch. They're out there. So, those bigger questions that arise from service.
Yeah.
And realizing that, hey, I might not be able to change the world. You go back and forth between the big picture and the individual act, and I might not be able to change the world, but I can serve this person a meal at St. Joseph's Diner this weekend, and that's going to change that person's day for that moment, and that might be all I can do, but at least that's something,
Yeah, and that it sounds too like, and at least maybe for you, that switching between the bigger picture issues and the individual service is kind of a way to avoid burnout in either front, right? Because a lot of people in working on those larger problems or working with individuals experience that burnout of that constant, despair, or like seeing despair, or seeing people hurt.
I think sometimes things become overwhelming when you're only looking at the big picture, and there's a lot of power to individual acts and action. I think it helps us to overcome a feeling of helplessness or powerlessness over those big issues that we're trying to tackle.
Yeah. What is your superpower?
My superpower? I would say, being able to meet people where they're at. I as I said, I love music. I love the art, all art forms. I'm fascinated with what people create and the beauty they can see in the world in ways that other people can't see. But I'm not an artist, and I've tried all different kinds of things, and it's not in my constitution. But years ago, a friend of mine gave me a book on creativity, and she told me to turn to a certain chapter. And the chapter was dedicated to people who are creative in their interactions with other people. And they said that, that's a really, what's the word that I'm looking for? Legitimate form of creativity. But we don't think of it. We often think of creativity as something that produces a concrete product. And the author of that book argued that not everyone has the ability to work with a variety of people in effective ways, and so I've taken that to heart, and I tend to be one of those people who a total stranger will sit next to me at a sporting event and begin to tell me their current huge life issue, having never met me before. But that's okay. If I'm in that place and they need somebody to tell them, I'm happy to listen. So
they know that you're a social worker.
That's it.
All right, I think this is going to be our last question for the day, and some people do deny this one too, because this is another similar to the 3 on the playlist. It's a tough one. Can you describe yourself in 3 words?
Loving, kind, or at least I strive to be, and I think devoted or committed to people, to my family, to my friends, and to community and society at large. I hope that those can be 3 words that end up on a headstone someday. So
I think those are good words. While you're here, is there anything else you'd like to say on camera, on the record?
Yeah, I didn't expect the interview to be about myself. And I really came prepared to be a cheerleader for AOC, because y'all have been tremendous community partners. And, for example, with our recent project, I've had people call me or send me a text saying, hey, I saw that program. That was awesome. We didn't realize you were doing that with the kids. And for the kids themselves, I think, to know that they're being seen, through a public broadcasting system throughout their community, that their grandparents might see them. And what a beautiful way to celebrate them taking the leap of, taking lessons with a traditional musician in our community and being very successful and having that culminate in a great performance. And without AOC, that celebration, wouldn't happen. So I really appreciate y'all as community partners and as folks who keep conversations going and help us to remember just how diverse and colorful our society is in Acadiana here.
We're glad to do it, and we thank you very much for coming down today.
Thank you.
Thank you.